You're watching Access Minnesota. Here's Jim Dubois.
You achieved a major accomplishment this year by answering a long-standing question. How much does it cost to educate a student at the University of Minnesota? The average undergrad cost was about $12,000 in 2009 and 10, but the averages obviously vary amongst the different colleges. What do these findings mean to you, and what do you intend to use with the data?
Well, first off, it was striking to me that we couldn't answer that question a year ago. It seems like a pretty basic question to ask and answer for an institution. And so we had a team work hard to get those numbers, to break it down by college and by campus. And so it lets you do some things right off the bat. You can identify some high-cost degrees or high-cost campuses and ask questions of why those are. And you can identify those that are lower cost and identify processes there that are perhaps allowing them to deliver that instruction at lower cost. So it seems to me really just a basic management tool to help us understand the costs of the product that we deliver. So from kind of a business 101 point of view, it seemed to be a good tool to have. It is one that a question that the regions had asked for a long time. So I was glad to give them that answer. We'll monitor this over time and be able to see the impact of technology changes that will make in the classroom, pedagogy changes that faculty may want, the mix of degrees that we may offer, graduate and undergraduate. So it's just sort of a nice dashboard element, if you will, for the institution to be able to keep an eye on these costs.
The analysis also looked at sponsored versus non-sponsored research at the university. First of all, what's the difference between the funding mechanisms for research here at the university?
So the lingo is sponsored research is research that is paid for by somebody outside the university. The principal payer of that for the University of Minnesota is the federal government. National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, other federal agencies award grants and contracts to universities based on a highly competitive proposal process. And the University of Minnesota does a fabulous job in that competitive space. We're the 8th largest public research university in the country in terms of dollars that our faculty and staff bring in. That's a huge accomplishment in a state that's 21st largest in population. So we're very competitive at that. Non-sponsored research is research that's paid for by the state appropriation, state O&M money, we call it. And that again goes to support research in a variety of areas in which that external funded research, which is primarily in the areas of science, engineering, and medicine, isn't available. So that fuels much research in the social sciences and the arts and humanities, and it helps pay for research costs that are mandated by the state in terms of what are called state specials, or dollars in our budget targeted at a specific area, but for which that special state appropriation doesn't cover the full cost. And so we use our state appropriation to cover some of those costs. And agriculture in our land grant mission is a big part of that. So it really does provide for a broad spectrum of research that benefits Minnesota.
President Kaler, as state funding for research diminishes, the university is turning to private corporations and foundations to help fill the void. What precautions should be taken to ensure that funders do not unduly influence the research process?
We have a very bright line around that. We have an aggressive management of actual or apparent conflicts of interest, and so we won't take a research grant from a company or an individual if there aren't clear provisions that allow us to publish our results, no matter what they are, no matter whether the funder likes them or not. Core academic freedom is essential to what we do. We have to be the people who tell truth to power. And if that power happens to be the people who funded that research project and the results aren't to their liking, that's too bad. So we adhere to that first and foremost. That's the strongest guiding principle. At the same time, we're interested in being helpful to businesses in Minnesota who need our research expertise, and so we welcome their collaboration. we look forward to finding ways to translate the research findings that we make into the marketplace for the good of the people of Minnesota. So it's always a delicate balance, but you rely on people with good judgment, and you rely on some layers of oversight to make sure that you don't get in a place where you don't want to be as an institution.
President Kaler, when you were at the university in the 1970s, about 40% of the U's cost was paid for by the state. Today, that amount has been reduced to about 18%. The average student debt now at the U is about $27,000. Some of our current legislators may have benefited from a higher level of state support at the colleges they were attending back in the day. If they are calling today for cuts in funding for higher education in Minnesota, is that a bit hypocritical?
I think that's probably a pretty good word, to tell you the truth. You and I benefited from an opportunity to have some help from the citizens of Minnesota to pay for our education. It's as simple as that. And as we step away as a state from helping the next generation of young people achieve that level of educational completion, it seems hard to me to understand how they can expect to have the quality of life that we enjoy, because they're going to be carrying a student debt forward into the early part of their lives. I think that's a very strong argument for reinvestment in public higher education. I just don't see how we can expect our sons or daughters, or grandsons, granddaughters to be at the quality of life that we have if we don't help them as our parents and grandparents helped us. Seems to be an element of fundamental fairness there that makes a strong argument. We get beat up, of course, because the cost of higher education is growing. What's actually the case is that the cost of higher education has decreased at the University of Minnesota by about 12% over the past decade. What's changed dramatically is who pays for it. When we were students, the state helped. The state's quit doing that, and we've had to ask students to carry a larger share of the load than you and I had to carry. And that's creating the debt issue right now, and I don't think that's a sustainable pattern going forward.
Does the university have any plans to help tackle the student debt issue?
Well, what we can do really are three things, and we're doing all three of them. One is articulate to the state, as we've been talking about. The second is a focus, an absolute focus on operational excellence. And that's been a buzzword for me since I arrived, and my senior leaders and others now have been working hard at identifying how we can do things more effectively, more rapidly, more efficiently, how we can get decisions made at the right level, how we can stop doing things that are not important to do, and how we can do what needs to be done more effectively. And that will drive cost out of our operation. There's no doubt about it. There's no large, complex organization like this university that couldn't find ways to do things more effectively, and we're bent to do that. And the third, of course, is philanthropy. We've raised a substantial amount of money this year alone for scholarship relief, and Karen and I and my family have made our own scholarship commitment to the University of Minnesota, and that's going to continue to be a very high priority for me going forward. And so I think as we try to rebalance our state relationship, become more effective and efficient, and grow philanthropy, we'll be able to bend that curve of student debt down to where it's more sustainable.
In your recent State of the University address, you called for a year-round academic calendar. What benefits would that calendar bring to the university? Well,
it's a pretty good list of things it would bring. Probably the most obvious is it would let us use our infrastructure more fully around the year. Particularly in laboratory-intensive classes, we are space limited in terms of the number of sections we can offer in the fall and the spring. So we could open that bottleneck. Number two, if you stub your toe in the fall and spring, academically speaking, you could come back in the summertime and pick up a course or two and get back on schedule. Third, you know, we don't really need to send our students back to South Minneapolis to bring the crops in anymore. So the opportunity to have a summer job or summer internship is important, But if we were able to make the summer semester a real equivalence of fall and spring, then you could take an internship or a job in the fall or the spring, and you could more seamlessly blend that whole experience together. So there's an effectiveness and efficiency factor there. Third, if you want to get done, you know, you're a returning vet from Iraq, you don't really need to spend 4 years to get your degree done here. If you went straight through, you could finish in under 3 years, get out, save those housing costs, and get out in the workplace much earlier. So that option, I think, creates a lot of opportunity. So that's just a handful of reasons, and there's some others. So I'm pretty excited about exploring that. Of course, it's a change, and a change at a university is a big deal. So we're looking at the economics of it. We're looking at the student demand, faculty, staffing, how we can make that all work. But I'm confident we'll be able to move, maybe not all the way there in one single step, but certainly start the journey towards that semester.
In your State of the University address, you also mentioned the need to make the university more nimble. How do you make a large bureaucratic organization like the university more nimble?
Well, I think that the first and easiest answer is getting decisions made at the right point. And part of that is getting frontline managers to understand that if you take a little risk, that's okay. And you don't need to run every decision up the flagpole and back down and take 3 or 4 weeks to make that happen. If you need to make a purchase, or you need to assign somebody to do something, you as a manager at an appropriate level ought to be empowered to do that. And we don't do that right now as well as we could. We also don't have, and this is a little bit down in the weeds, but we need to do an analysis of how many individuals report to any given supervisor. That's a so-called spans situation. And sometimes supervisors have too few employees, and so you wonder why that supervisor is in that loop. And sometimes they have too many and they can't effectively guide and mentor their employees. So we need to get that right-sized at the institution. And when you get those two elements tuned up, then you're able to be more responsive and effective as an organization. That's what I mean by nimble.
Can you tell us more about some long-term goals and strategies that you have for the university that we haven't already mentioned in this interview?
Sure. We are the Silicon Valley of food in a very real way. If you draw a 10-mile radius circle from where we're sitting now, you encounter a handful of the largest food companies on the planet. And we know agribusiness in Minnesota is 20+% of our state economy. So for this university to be the place where we can convene the best thinkers and the best researchers on problems of food supply, food safety, food distribution, we could really impact, I think, in a very important way, not only in a positive way, the economy of Minnesota, but also affect real change in world hunger issues. I think that would be a great thing for the University of Minnesota to be known for. We are in the process of talking through a more integrated structure with our partners at Fairview and with regards to the Academic Health Center and the Ambulatory Care Center that we're building with them a block from campus. Those are really important conversations as we move that relationship to one that allows us to benefit our academic health center, and in particular bring resources to the medical school to restore the medical school to the position of prominence it had 30 or 40 years ago. It's still a very good medical school. I want it to be a great medical school. So those two elements you'll see more focus from me on in the coming year.
University of Minnesota President Eric Kaler, thanks so much for joining us on Access Minnesota.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That's all for this month's edition of Access Minnesota. We'll catch you again next month. Thanks for watching.
Access Minnesota. Issues that matter to you. Join us again next week as we bring you the newsmakers and stories that shape our everyday lives. Access Minnesota is produced by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association in cooperation with the University of Minnesota's College of Liberal Arts.